Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here today. I'm here joined with Sheriff Steve Whidden with the Hendry County Sheriff's Office, and then by Special Agent in Charge Rodney Crawford of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. My name is Roger Handberg. As the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida, I serve as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for 35 counties in Florida. I'm a career federal prosecutor. I've been a federal prosecutor for more than 20 years. As part of my work, it is my honor and it is my duty to uphold the principles of justice and to ensure accountability from our public officials, our government employees, our law enforcement personnel, and others who are entrusted to serve and protect our citizens. Over the last 2 years, my office has prosecuted more than 60 cases against law enforcement officers, military members, teachers, postal employees, and other public officials who have failed in their most basic duty. That basic duty by breaching the trust of our citizens that have been placed in them. And today I want to highlight one particular case involving the alleged excessive use of force by a law enforcement officer in LaBelle, Florida. Let me first say that those who serve in law enforcement are a critical part of our communities. These dedicated men and women have my utmost respect for the difficult and extremely important work that they do every single day. And for that, I want to express my sincere gratitude. Within any profession, however, there are individuals who betray the trust that we place in them. Just as in any other sector, law enforcement is not immune to the presence of a small number of individuals who tarnish the reputation of their profession, who erode public trust, and who damage community relations. We will not turn a blind eye to misconduct. Rather, it is an imperative that we hold accountable those who violate the very principles that they are sworn to uphold, and that we work to strengthen oversight and promote a culture of accountability and integrity. And that is why we are here today. Last year, on the 4th of July, former Deputy Tyler Williams of the Hendry County Sheriff's Office arrested a man suspected of burglarizing a residence. As captured on his body-worn camera, former Deputy Williams placed the suspect in handcuffs and walked the man to the rear of his police vehicle to conduct a search. Former Deputy Williams' supervisor was also on the scene, and the two had a conversation about the events leading to the suspect being placed in handcuffs. During this conversation, the suspect attempted to talk to former Deputy Williams and to interject himself into the conversation on multiple occasions. In response to one of those times, former Deputy Williams grabbed the man by the shoulders and threw him to the ground. Handcuffed, the victim was unable to brace himself for the fall. Former Deputy Williams threw the man to the ground with sufficient force that he was rendered unconscious after his chin hit the asphalt. As the body camera shows, former Deputy Williams stood over the man as he lay motionless and yelled at him, telling him that he was warned to not push against former Deputy Williams. Thanks to the dedicated work of the Hendry County Sheriff's Office and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a thorough investigation was conducted into this incident. The Hendry County Sheriff's Office terminated Williams' employment for multiple policy violations. And last week, a federal grand jury sitting here in Fort Myers, Florida, returned a criminal indictment against former Deputy Williams, charging him with 2 counts. One count, which is a civil rights violation, and a second count, which is a count for obstructing justice by falsifying a police report. These are merely allegations, and former Deputy Williams is to be presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. The charges that have been brought against him in federal court are serious. He is facing up to 30 years in federal prison. This case is an excellent example of how my office, through our partnerships with our local and federal law enforcement agencies, seeks to hold accountable those in positions of public trust. but we are equally committed to protecting those persons when their safety is jeopardized. Law enforcement officials and public servants should not be threatened with harm for doing their jobs. The work that they do is important, and my office is firmly committed to protecting them. In just the last 2 years, for example, my office has criminally prosecuted a number of cases involving assaults against law enforcement officers. We've obtained a federal indictment of a defendant who forcibly was alleged to have used knives during an arrest against federal agents. We have obtained convictions in federal court of 2 defendants who assaulted federal corrections officers, convictions that resulted in sentences of over 11 years for one defendant and 20 years for a second defendant. And we secured a guilty plea from a defendant who opened fire on federal agents and police officers during a high-speed chase, a guilty plea for which the defendant is facing a minimum of 28 years in federal prison, up to life. The protections of my office and our law enforcement partners extend to every civil servant. For example, in December, my office announced the filing of 2 federal complaints charging 5 individuals with armed robberies of United States postal letter carriers. In a separate case, another defendant was sentenced to more than 9 years in federal prison after robbing a letter carrier at gunpoint. The civil rights prosecution that is being announced here today and the other cases that I've mentioned reflect my office's commitment to fairly enforcing the law. We are dedicated to holding individuals in trusted positions accountable for their actions, and we are equally committed to ensuring that they receive our protections when they are threatened or attacked. Our pursuit of justice is unwavering. I stand before you here today with a firm commitment in fostering accountability and restoring trust in our institutions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the sheriff.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. But I tell you what, when I watched the body camera, I was shocked and I was appalled. You know, when we swear a deputy in, he has great power, and with that comes great responsibility. And what I saw on this body camera, it violated the trust of our community. And that trust is so sacred, and we work very hard to keep that trust between our deputies and our community of Hendry County, which is one of the reasons why we have body cameras, because it documents everything that they do. And, you know, initially when I saw this, again, shock and awe. He was placed on administrative leave immediately. We forwarded it over to the United States attorneys for a federal investigation, and he was ultimately terminated. So I just want to thank the attorneys for the job that they did and for the cooperation. So with that, I just hope that the community knows that we will still strive to keep that trust within our community. Thank you.
And with that, we will open it up to any questions. So the next scheduled event, so the defendant had his initial appearance last week in federal court on Thursday, where he had his conditions of release set. His next scheduled court date is April 17th, which is his arraignment, where he will enter a plea. And then after that, the case will then get set on the trial docket. And so after that, the next date in this case will be a trial, which we will expect to be set for some time in June or July, but it is not unusual for a case to receive a continuance and to have the trial later in the year.
Could you, because he allegedly lied on the report, and that's, you know, what kind of justifies force in a lot of instances when you read that. How did it go? Was it his supervisor who filed a complaint? How did it go in the process where the investigation started?
Well, as the sheriff indicated, the matter was referred to the federal authorities to conduct an investigation, which was led by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And as part of that investigation, they then developed the evidence which allowed, and there's 2 counts in this case. There's the alleged excessive use of force, and then the second, which is what you're alluding to, is the false information that's alleged to be on the police report. And in count 2 of our indictment, it does include a specification of what parts of that are alleged to be untrue, and I think we've also provided a copy of that. Yes, ma'am.
Tyler Williams, is this the same male who was a police officer with Fort Myers Police Department and fired back in 2021?
You know, I would have to refer that to someone else. I think the answer is yes, but I would want someone else to verify that.
So would there be any comment on hiring him then as a deputy with Hendry County following
Sure.
being fired, or can you confirm that he was fired from Park?
Yeah, it's my understanding that through the backgrounds that the allegations were overturned from the firing, which is the reason why we picked him up.
Because they were dropped and then he was hired with Hendry?
Yes, ma'am. Unsustained or whatever yeah.
Sheriff, would you mind just describing sort of the challenge of balancing that, seeing the allegations, seeing that they were dropped, and obviously the experience in law enforcement, I would imagine, is appealing. Just kind of juggling all those variables when you make a hire like that.
So understand that in any law enforcement agency, people file complaints all the time. And I want to say this to that. Before I got body cameras, we got tons of complaints. Once we had body cameras, we're a small county. We don't have the mass media that we have over in Lee County or bigger agencies. So we didn't put it out in a mass form that, hey, we now have body cameras. But I can tell you we've had them for probably 6 or 7 years now. 99.5 or higher % of all complaints that I get on deputies are absolutely false. So when you have other agencies that don't have body cameras, you have complaints. And I've seen complaints that go in files. There's internal affairs investigations. Some are sustained, and we look at those. We don't like to pick those up. But if it's a complaint, depending on what it is, and it's absolutely unsustained or proven to be untrue, then we have no problem picking them up. So we do have to balance that. And a lot of variables that we look at. And so with that, but really it comes down to sustained, unsustained, or what the situation is.
How long was the former deputy placed on administrative leave before he was ultimately fired?
He was placed on leave pretty much immediately after we found out about the incident. And so what we do is, well, we have to do an internal affairs investigation. However, we have to wait till the criminal investigation is done before we can do the internal. So it was after that we did the internal, and he was terminated immediately. So, any other questions for me? All right, thank you.
And the evidence that that we're going to have in court is going to relate to the incident that I've described, and the incident related to this particular episode. And we appreciate the sheriff's cooperation during this investigation. We appreciate the great work of the Federal Bureau of Investigation in bringing this case so that this case can have its day in court. And with that, I appreciate your time here today. Thank you. I'm sorry, you have a question? Yeah.
Do you expect the case to occur here?
This case will occur here. Yes, it's pending in federal court here, and we expect that the trial will occur here in Fort Myers.
Thank you.
Thank you.